Hey, let's talk about that thing that sits in the heart of your business. You know, that thing that you might call your database, maybe your CRM system. It should be the central hub for all of the work that you do to build and maintain healthy relationships with an audience of people that you might describe as being candidates. And I know that there are plenty of recruitment businesses out there today who will proudly say, we have thousands of candidates on our database, yet may quietly say to each other, I can't find anyone for this job. And because they can't find anyone for the job, they've lost sight as to what the purpose of the database is. Because perhaps it has fallen to become the most simple definition of database, which is a file and retrieval system. It's one step up from being a bucket of CVs. And because it is searched using keywords and it is relying on the words to be present in the CV at the discretion of the candidate who wrote the CV, searches can feel inaccurate. And those searches will continue to feel inaccurate until we start to curate a system that helps us to be able to find people. Find people based upon our assessment of them. It's why tags or skills trees or attributes exist in databases. Yet at the point of adding a candidate to the system, so many recruiters don't give it enough thought. So candidates aren't coded effectively, which means that searches are ineffective, which means we rely on text-based searches of the content of CVs, and as the CV becomes older, the relevance of the results starts to reduce. So we end up building something that becomes a candidate graveyard rather than a genuine engagement tool to maintain visibility and dialogue with an audience of people that will continue to provide us with value for the lifetime of our business. And I know it may sound as though I'm talking old-fashioned to see the database as being the central hub, because there's plenty of recruiters who will say to me, Jeremy, why do I need a database when I've got LinkedIn? Yet often those people start to complain about how difficult it is to get responses on LinkedIn. Because it's not just your database, it also belongs to 99,999 other recruiters. When you own your own central hub, you are the person who has access to it. You are the person who dictates the cadence with which communication takes place. And you might start to find that your audience becomes more engaged with you in a platform that you own than relying on your communication taking place on a platform that you don't, where other people are also paying for the privilege to pester, to chase, or to engage with those individuals. So the central point, that CRM, I feel is increasing in value, and particularly as we see more and more business owners talking about the challenges of cost that is associated with LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that they have a captive audience in the recruitment industry because they know that the majority of the recruitment industry have taken their eye off the ball of looking after that central location, which is their own database. I would be quietly confident that the majority of you who are listening to this, if you put your mind to it, hidden in your database is probably your next 10 placements. Yet you'll spend many calories outside of your database looking for new, looking for fresh, because you've lost faith in the central reservoir, which should be your first port of call. Quite frequently when I talk to people about the jobs that they're working on, the challenges that they're facing, they tell me that what they want is more candidates. Jeremy, this job is particularly difficult to fill because of the technical requirements or because of the language skills that are associated with it. I've done LinkedIn. I've done the job boards. I've done my database. I need more candidates. Rarely is it true, people. They don't need more candidates. They need better engagement. They need to invest more time in ensuring that they are turning up consistently to engage with those people so that when it is time, there is a responsive audience in place. I'm going to take you back in time to a project that I did really early at the tipping point between me leaving employment and starting my business. So early as an L&D professional. I was working in a large recruitment agency where there was a business that had somewhere in the region of 300 consultants all working in the same brand. It was multi-site, so they had a branch network across the UK, and it was multidiscipline, so it was relatively generalist in terms of what they would hire, but regionally focused. And one of the challenges was they weren't filling enough jobs to be able to make enough revenue for that particular brand to be in profit. And it had traded for 5 years, making a loss as part of a much larger group. A new MD was brought in, and the new MD was given a brief. We need to turn this part of the business around so that it gets into profit. Otherwise, we'll be looking to make a disposal. So the new MD was given a very clear brief: turn around the trading history of the last 5 years. And at exactly that moment, we found ourselves in a global financial crisis. And because of that, there was a compression in the job market, there was a lot of volatility, and there was a lot of activity in the candidate landscape because people were losing their jobs. And as this was going on, the brief was, for 5 years you've made a loss, now it's time to make a profit. So I worked closely with the newly hired MD, and we looked at the data that was in the business. We looked at the assets that the business actually had access to, and the strongest asset that it had was its candidate database. It had 128,000 people in the database. And strangely, the business was overspending on its advertising budget because every job was being advertised, because apparently there weren't enough good candidates, so we had to keep on looking for more. We had 128,000 in the database. As I interrogated the data of the 128,000 candidates on the database, less than 8% of them, I think it was at 7.3% of the data, we'll call it the 8%, right? We'll be generous. 8% of those candidates had been spoken to in the previous 90 days, which meant that 92% hadn't. And because 92% of the candidates hadn't been spoken to in 90 days, from the candidate's perspective, they felt forgotten. So if they start to feel forgotten, there will be a period of time where they feel forgotten. Oh, I haven't heard back from. Oh, it's been another couple of days. I haven't heard back from. And I know some of you will be saying, well, they should make contact with us. Maybe they did. I'm not here to judge that bit, right? But as they drift, as they start to feel forgotten, eventually they will forget. And the only thing that is left as a reminder of the interaction is the entry on the database. And there'll be consultants who are in that business who can't find that person because at the point that they entered the database, the consultant who put them on there didn't code them correctly so that they could be found again. And the only way that they could be found again is either by knowing their name or interrogating the text in their CV to help to be able to find them. So they start to get hidden. They become a grain of sand on the beach and the consultant is trying to find a ruby. So as more and more of these people get forgotten, consultants would then look at their record and go, they're out of date, they haven't been spoken to for a long time, I'm looking for fresh because I have a job that I need to fill now. So because everyone was hungry to get jobs filled today, they were always looking for today's candidates for today's jobs, which perpetuated a cycle of advert, fresh candidates, new product, deal with those that you're interested in. The rest of them that are on the database, if they're not suitable or they're not interested, they'll slowly drift away from us. And so the cycle continues. Still to this day, people, there are recruitment agencies who inadvertently fall into the same trap. There are recruiters I know who claim to be specialists in their market, who get a new job and they start by messaging strangers on LinkedIn. But they claim to have been a specialist in that marketplace for 2 or 3 years. But they keep following the same process. They've not been building a CRM system to help them to manage the relationships with the talent that they've already found. So they're perpetually looking for new. Meanwhile, back at the story that I was telling, that business where 8% of those candidates had been spoken to in the previous 90 days, because we identified that the strongest asset that this business had that had been trading for 5 years was the collection of candidates' information, the harvesting of candidates at the point of their interest in looking for a job, to then put them onto a database to then do nothing with them. So the shortest route to get to where the business needed to be, which was profit, was to capitalise on its strongest asset. So a plan was set. Let's build a process that we take to this brand. Let's start to look at the power of the data that we've got, and let's start to work more intelligently to start a process of re-engaging with this audience. And remember, these were generalist recruiters that were focused on regional parts of the UK. So they weren't specialists, but they were specialists in a set of postcodes. And that meant that there was an eclectic mix of different profiles and CVs and individuals that made up this database. So we started to look at what are the highest demand skills in the marketplace today, and let's start by warming up that bit of the database. And as we started to look at the work that could be done to warm that part of the database, the percentage of candidates spoken to moved from 8%, and we took it to 20%. And that took 3 months. 3 months with every single person in the business making a commitment to phone 10 people every day to go through the simple act of leaving them a message, having a conversation, finding out what their current status is, what's the situation. And we gave them a stack of questions. And the stack of questions helped to be able to identify what's going on out there in the businesses that these people work at. What can we get visibility of to help us to be able to feed our own sales intelligence systems? And how can we be more supportive of those who tell us that they are primed for a move, or they are in a high tension position where they are out of work and they need to find work? So as we started to focus on the commercial conversation, not just the updating of the database, and 20% of those people got spoken to, the flow of jobs, and remember this is in the global financial crisis when everyone was having a struggle, the flow of jobs into the business that were permanent jobs increased by 13%, because there was now more visibility on what was going on in other companies. There was now more visibility as to who are the most talented people that are currently on our database that we could start to associate with to create some more compelling sales messages to entice prospects. And the flow of temp jobs into the business increased by 22%. Because again, there was a greater level of visibility as to what was going on at a volatile time to help to be able to identify those organizations out there who are implementing a plan to see if they could climb their way out of whatever this global financial crisis was doing and impacting on their business. And not only did job flow increase, both perm and temp, the other thing that happened was average margin increased, because there was a greater level of confidence that the consultants knew how they were going to find people and where they were going to find those people, and they could feel more certain that they could justify their price point. So cutting what ended up being a 12-month-long story short for this particular episode, in the year of the global financial crisis, that was the first year that that particular business, in the previous 5 years having made a loss, actually turned a profit. And it turned a profit not by reducing cost base, but by improving the level of engagement that existed at a desk level between consultants and the entities in the CRM system that perhaps others might describe as being candidates, that we just saw as being human beings we had relationships with. And as the level of engagement increased, the level of knowledge in the business increased, the level of leads generated increased in the business, and the level of job flow started to increase in the business by focusing on one simple metric. And still today, I find myself talking to consultants at a desk level, managers at a team level, and business owners at an enterprise level about the level of engagement that exists with the pool of individuals that sits inside the database that perhaps in the past were behaving like candidates. And it is rare, and I will go further to say it is so rare that I think I would describe it as never. Never have I encountered an organisation where there is an explicit strategy that exists in the business to create layered levels of communication between the business and those individuals that sit inside the CRM system who have interacted in the past as candidates, to be able to maintain some form of communication, some form of update, some form of awareness, to be able to ensure that when timing is right for both parties, they seek each other out. So think about your database, people. Think about how you are using your CRM to help you to be able to turn up at the right time to have the right conversations with the right people. Because when you start to get that right from a candidate perspective, you no longer need to be as reliant as you probably are today on external advertising, on job board searches, and on LinkedIn. Those things now become an additional support mechanism to help you to be able to grow your CRM with the right quality of people, that it starts to add value and breadth to your search capabilities. And as all of those environments start to become more expensive, whether that is the cost of advertising or the cost of CV search or the cost of being part of LinkedIn, you are slowly and quietly building your own engagement platform and your own communities within it, which will help you to be able to outperform the market in terms of speed, in terms of quality, and in terms of engagement. And there are things at the moment that are on the rise, people. Ghosting, candidates ghosting recruiters is on the rise. Clients ghosting recruiters is on the rise. Recruiters ghosting both candidates and clients is probably on the rise too, you know. All of these are indicative of the fact that it is becoming more and more transactional in an industry that claims to be very relationship orientated. Yet when the rubber meets the road and we look at how are relationships made, how are they built, how are they measured, and how are they reinforced, there's very little strategy that sits behind it, and lots of rhetoric. Lots of chat about the quality of relationships and how we'll never be replaced by AI, yet there isn't a strategic roadmap that actually says this is how we grow and develop the relationships that we foster with those individuals that are in our marketplace that we would describe as being prospects, customers, and candidates. And because of it, tools get underutilized. Tools that should be used on a daily basis, such as the CRM system, start to take a backseat, and other tools, which are premium products, such as LinkedIn and job boards, are overused and still underutilized because they're not helping us to be able to build what we need to have as a central location, so we become overly reliant on them. LinkedIn is not your database, in my opinion. It is the departure lounge of the airport. And we are encouraging people to get on the plane, which is to talk to us. And when they get on the plane, the destination is the CRM. We want to keep promoting to people the benefit of engaging with us and joining the CRM so that we can start to remove a lot of the noise and have a more engaged audience. It's the same with your BD. You think about your BD activities, your database, your CRM should be exactly that. It is helping you to manage the relationships that you are building with your prospects to turn them into customers, and how you're developing the relationships with your customers to develop your partners. How you code those clients, how you search for those clients, how you engage with those clients, what you do from an email perspective, what you're doing from a face-to-face perspective, and what you're doing when you use the phone. If you don't have that, then again your database of clients ends up being an archive of the history of your sales activity and isn't necessarily helping you to decide what does next month's sales activity need to look like based upon where I'm at with my relationships and where I'd like to get them to. So whether you're an employed consultant, you're managing a team, you own your own recruitment business, think about what you want your CRM to do for you, and think clearly about CR&M, customer relationship management. The customers who are the candidates, the customers who are the clients, and how it helps us to be able to ensure that we're having the right conversations with the right people on the right day about the right subject. Simples, right? So if you have any questions about what I'm describing, I'd love to hear. If you have any thoughts on what I'm describing in terms of feedback, I'd love to hear. As usual, this is an episode where I am sharing my opinions based upon my observations. It is a professional opinion. It's for you to do what you want with what I've chosen to share. Just take a leaf out of that book from the agency who went from 8% spoken to 20% spoken to of candidates on their database, and going from making 5 years of loss to being for the first time in profit in the same year that a global financial crisis hit. And then think about your own talent pool, database, CRM. Search to see how many people have I actually had a conversation within the last 90 days that are on there, and therefore how many have I not spoken to. And if the ones that I've not spoken to, what am I going to do to be able to bring that to line so that a higher proportion of people hear from me a minimum of once per quarter? Simples. Have fun. Enjoy it. Let me know how you get on.